Hello, and welcome to Walk the Talk Show with Waylon Lewis, coming to you live, or not if you're watching this much later, from Boulder, Colorado, from my living room. And I'm honored to be here with a very famous yoga teacher, famous for very worthwhile reasons, as we'll get into, Ana Forrest. So thank you so much for joining us, Ana.
You're welcome.
And,
It's my pleasure.
yeah, well, it's our honor. So, and Ana, where are you coming to us live from today?
I'm in Delphi in Greece,
That sounds exciting.
and I'm so excited to be here because I've been wanting to come to the place of the oracle for most of my life, and now I'm here.
So today we're going to talk about Forrest Yoga and what that is. It's incredibly popular right now. We're also going to talk about something I'm personally very excited about, and I know a lot of my friends are, which is how to process the challenges of life, trauma or addiction, stress. Often, yoga culture on the surface can be kind of about pushing away stress and just being happy and running around in pastel outfits, but it's actually really tough work, and Ana has sort of manifested that for many years. I've seen you do many amazing demonstrations. So without further ado, we're gonna get into that. Everyone who's watching, if you'd like to join Ana and myself, we're going to offer a bow. This is a Buddhist bow, so you can basically it's just offering respect and a reminder in your own life of your mission to be of benefit, or your mission generally in your own life. So if everyone would like to join me, you can take a good posture, a good but relaxed posture, and ground your tush in the earth. The earth is the principle of stability and details. And then connect your head with the notion of the heavens above, the mountaintops, the realm of vision and ideas, inspiration, mission. And then take a breath and connect both of those in your heart. And thank you, Ana. Offer a bow. So now Ana has agreed to lead all of us in a moment of offering or prayer or meditation. We'll find out.
This is a brief for direction prayer. And so, first thing with every human, no matter what kind of ceremony I'm leading, we all need to start breathing deeply. So as you inhale, spread your ribs sideways. With exhale, pull the belly in so your breath has sort of the sound of like the wind moving through the trees. Do that like right now. And I have two beautiful stones here. One is a crystal from the Himalayas, and one is a rock from Uluru in Australia, which is considered the heart of the world. And Uluru is also known as Ayers Rock, but the Aboriginal people call it Uluru, so that's its real name. So these are really beautiful, powerful helpers. Oh, sacred ones of all directions, I call on you, and I invite you to come in this conversation where we are talking to each other, but also to so many people. And I ask each and every one of you that are listening to wake up your heart and wake up your ears to pull in the treasures that can make a difference to you, and use this conversation that we are bringing to you for your highest good, and to learn how to walk in beauty, which means how to let the experiences of your life dance in your heart, the challenging ones, the ones of beauty, the ones of love, the ones of astonishment, and be willing to feel your emotions and your feelings all the way through so you can digest them, distill the treasures from them, and move out that which is no longer relevant. Aho, takoyasu.
Aho, thank you. So that right there, I feel like, was the entire interview. I mean, you're saying that we actually have to embrace the good and the bad and the happy and the sad, and that's the only way to process it. Is that correct? Something like that?
Embrace sounds a lot more affectionate than I think is real.
Uh-huh.
When we have it go down, we're not really embracing it, honestly. But to be able to recapitulate or to comb through our experiences to get, what did I learn from this? From my mistakes, from the betrayals, from all that stuff that builds up our emotional backlog. I call it emotional pus pockets, to be really graphic about it. You know,
Yeah.
what did I learn, experience that I can use to evolve myself? And then be willing to let go of the things that are sitting inside and poisoning us. So the resentments, the hatred, the shame, the guilt. It's like, okay, what do I need to do to process this, chew it up, and literally to move it on out, just like our intestinal tract moves out the things we no longer can get nutrition from, to
Right.
be polite. Once in a
Oh,
while, I'm polite.
yeah. I love it because yeah. Please. It's breaking up a lot. I love it because there's a sense of bravery and kind of frankness and sense of humor in just embracing our pus pockets, if I might, or bear hugging them, if not embracing them, instead of trying to like suppress them and push away anything unpleasant. Would you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back on that. It's like I wouldn't suggest. It's like embracing our pus pockets. To me, sounds like New Age bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think we can actually do that. But what I would request, as we work with something like that,
Yeah.
is to have some compassion for the area that's holding this difficult thing.
Yeah.
You know, like when we have like that emotional backlog in our heart or in our guts or in our genitals or wherever it happens to be, and find out, quest for what is necessary to cleanse this area, to release this toxic stuff.
Yeah.
So to care enough about the part of us that's holding this painful, poisonous stuff, to move the poison out, which means a lot of experimentation to find out what actually works. Doing Om Shanti over it actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so frequently we have to go back into the experience and redigest it to find out what is it we're missing here that we need to get out of it, which can frequently be, it can be a realization, or it can be like, oh my God, I didn't know that that happened, or this person was involved, or who knows what the piece is that kind of pulls the plug on that holding pattern so it drains. So being willing to care enough to cleanse that from us.
Yeah.
No
Well,
matter what.
I think Anna, you'd find, and your students might find common cause with Elephant. We are founded on our like spirituality section is actually literally called non-New Agey spirituality, and the whole idea is to have a sense of. I mean, what's so wonderful about yourself and your approach to trauma or addiction or all these challenges in life is, even though it's much more graphic, as you might say, and it's not all happy, hippy dippy, love and lighty. There's much more of a sense of humor, and it actually works, like you said, if you get down in the mud or whatever it is.
Yeah. What is really great about Forrest Yoga to me, one is that, it worked for me, but two is that everything in it is based on what works. Period.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, it's not in there.
So, Anna, maybe tell us about how did Forrest Yoga come about? You studied with BKS Iyengar and others. Tell us about that. What is Forrest Yoga?
Forrest Yoga is what I created based on what the traditional forms of yoga were not doing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there is many things I got out of the Shivananda system or the Iyengar system or Ashtanga that was very useful. Mm-hmm. And there's many things that were not, and many things that were untouched in me, that those systems just, they didn't reach it. They didn't access it. They were not helpful. So there was things like abdominals, like relaxing the neck, like working with the craziness that my life had instilled in me. And I needed to do more than what was happening in these different systems. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of different places that I went in order to find some sort of resolution. I went into the healing fields, I went into the therapeutic fields, I went into regression therapy, I went into Native American ceremony, and most recently I've begun to journey into the Aboriginal and Australia ways of ceremony and of connecting to the land. And these are the shining threads that I wove into the tapestry of Forrest Yoga. It's like what has worked for me. But doing the asanas was a very powerful part of it. But I also found that I could do the asanas the same way I did my addictions, which was sort of being bulimic in my asanas, just barging into them and being as numb as possible, and recognizing that that only worked a little bit. And
Well, so
there had to
you're
Hmm?
referencing a pretty difficult background that you had. You've been very bravely open and generously open in your book Fierce Medicine and yoga journal articles talking about your background. It's just so people know that you're not talking about being stressed on a 9-to-5 job in terms of your background. You had a pretty difficult childhood, to put it politely.
Yeah, that's a polite way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
could you maybe just give us some idea of what you're talking about? I mean, there's people out there, friends of mine who have addictions, who have, trauma. You walked that path, and Forest Yoga was there to address that. You built that to address that.
That's correct. And it started out with being born crippled
Uh-huh.
and being abused, sexually abused, being given a lot of drugs very young, and then continuing my own addictions with drugs and alcohol, especially alcohol and cigarettes, and doing everything I could to numb out and also to push my edges of feeling. So a super intensity junkie, so doing very crazy, dangerous things.
Mm-hmm.
And at 17, jumping off a cliff in the desert, doing my very best to end my suffering.
Mm.
And that was actually one of the first places where I had to really acknowledge that something happened so far as the sacred ones intervening, because though I had investigated my suicide strategy very carefully, where I had jumped, I ended up landing in sand where there wasn't sand earlier that day.
Hmm.
So there was only rocks. That's
Yeah.
why I jump off of the cliff there. And then I landed in sand. And when I came to, I was really scratched and sore and screwed up and had sand in every unmentionable place imaginable.
Yeah.
But not broken.
Yeah.
But something broke inside. And I had to walk out of the deep desert, and then came out of the desert and sold my horse, came out of the horse world, and chose to make another jump because my jump into death didn't work, and so I got enough courage up to jump into life. And I went into a residential teacher training course and stopped doing drugs and alcohol and smoke and became a vegetarian all on the same day.
Wow.
Now, a good part of the beginning part of my teacher training course was going through DTs, which, as any addict knows, is delirium tremens.
Wow.
And going through the hallucinations and the shakes and all this stuff, and that was my teacher training course, was my own personal journey through hell, and that was where I began to build some respect for myself, is being able to sit through the hallucinations and not, run away screaming. So that was, actually what was happening in the teacher training course. I don't know, there's some philosophy discussions or something going on, but it was not relevant to me.
How did you find the patience or the breath or the bravery to sit with that instead of running away? I mean, that's gonna be hard. The DT, everything you were talking about.
No, I just remember sort of fastening my legs into lotus and locking my hands onto my knees and watching these thorny vines wrap around me and spiders and scorpions and things crawling on me, and just was like, I will not budge.
Uh-huh.
It's like, if this is what it takes for life, I am going to sit here.
Right.
And so just watching and refusing to run. Because I had tried to run. Suicide is running in a really big way.
Yeah.
And so I had made an internal pledge to not run. And in retrospect, I could say, there was bravery, but mostly what I was aware of is how much fear I had. A lot of fear. Everything was scary to me.
Yeah.
Healing was scary to me. Talking to someone was scary to me. Sitting with myself was scary to me. I mean, everything was scary. Choosing to live was scary.
Yeah.
And then as I continued to grow, I had to continue to choose life. I mean, that was part of my internal pledging. And what did that mean? It would mean different things depending on what was my next challenge. You know, like when I stopped, when I was able to stop, let me put it that way, my bulimia, which came after all these other addictions, because it was sort of a sneakier addiction, I didn't recognize what it was. It wasn't, the eating disorder thing was very much in the closet as a culture, so it wasn't like I had heard that word before. So when I finally recognized it, it was like having to make that decision again of choosing life, because the bulimia was a sneaky suicide, you know? It was like a way of choosing numbness and death.
Huh.
And so continuing to choose that, and then years later, choosing to care about my students. That was really big. And then choosing to care enough about them that I actually started to learn how to love my students. But I was a very conditional lover. It was like, be on your mat, be on time, do what I say, and then I can care about you. And then once the class was over, that was it. But I considered being able to care for my students for an hour and a half a tremendous quantum leap.
Yeah.
Then, you know, I chose to hunt and stalk and track, what is this love? And how does it apply personally? And that was really difficult for me, because I actually had to develop the neuroreceptors for love, because I didn't have that growing up. And if I was born with them, they died, they atrophied. So I actually had to choose to chase down, how do I grow this? How do I grow caring and feeling? And how do I take it past affection into this very risky, scary place called love? And as I've gotten older, I'm 57 now, I'm a damn good lover. I truly am. I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, you know, I think you are. I love that you talk about love as being something scary, because it is certainly for me as a bachelor. But most people think of love as this sort of like, again, kind of new agey, happy thing. You know, it's all Valentine's Day or whatever. But love takes incredible bravery to lock yourself in Lotus in a state of love and not run away.
At that point, that was in 1975, that I locked myself into Lotus, and I did not have any capacity to love at that point.
Yeah, no, I get it.
That
yeah,
was,
I was saying virtually, you know, like later on you had to, you know, it's hard. We have to lock ourselves in Lotus in every area of our life at some point and say we're not going to budge and we're going to open up or deal with this.
Yeah. How let's use love for a minute, because that's so easy to, like, you know, people hear that word and it immediately goes into this airy-fairy new age bullshit, which is so, me, it gives me spiritual diabetes.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. And yet that is what I'm starting to talk more and more about, because it's such a fantabulous way of working, and yet it takes all of my fucking courage to do it. Truly. And I think it is much more courageous to respond honestly, to respond with compassion and with that heart wisdom, and that is an act of love, even though what can come out of my mouth can be really bloody uncomfortable for me and for my listener. But I think doing like that sweetie pie stuff is not an act of love, it's an act of deceit. So I feel like that's part of fierce medicine. It's like how to speak in a way that I care so deeply, I'm willing to speak the truth to you, even if it's really uncomfortable or scary for both of us. And I care that much that I'll do that.
Yeah, Anna, I grew up in the Buddhist tradition, as I've mentioned once or twice, and in the Buddhist tradition there's a notion called idiot compassion, which is engaging in that sort of fake love that you were just talking about, where you're lovey, but you're not actually being helpful to the person and to the person you love. And often to be helpful to the person you love, it has to be tough love, or it has to be honesty, like you were saying. Yeah.
I think also one of the things I had to learn to do that was very excruciatingly painful for me was to recognize when I was doing a behavior that I call being a sacrificial whore.
Uh-huh. What is it? So what is that?
Well, because I felt I had at the core of my being a feeling of not being enough and needing to be needed, I would go out of my way for people and being available to them at all hours of the day and night, you know, for my addicts and for whatever, these people that needed me, to the point where I would work myself until I collapsed, or I collapsed my health. And I was doing what so many of our religions teach us is noble, which is this sacrificial entity.
Right.
And I actually had to realize that that was sick.
Yeah.
Sickening. You know, and now in the therapy world, we have this cool word called being codependent. But I don't feel like that word encapsulated enough of the illness around it. And so it's like what I have been learning to do and what I teach is how to nourish myself first so I can give from full, instead of slicing my veins and saying, here, you can have my lifeblood, and if I die giving it to you, it's a worthwhile death. And it's like, no, that's idiocy. And that's lousy cultural training.
Yes.
And I believe that our teachers and our masters and our avatars need to learn something different than this sacrificial whore mentality. And I am catching myself and catching all of my beloved Forrest Yoga teachers and saying there's a different way to give something of beauty to our people besides running yourself into the ground and doing this sacrifice thing. Take it out of it. Learn how to give from full instead of from empty. Does that answer that?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, it reminds me of, like, you know, the cliche thing people talk about when you're in the airplane and they tell you how to, in case of emergency, you need to put on your own air mask first, and then you can give it to your child once you've taken care of yourself. That you can't help the child if you're suffocating, right?
Yes. I did an interview recently where it was mostly to an audience of women. And one of the questions that was asked to me was, after the woman is done taking care of everybody else, how does she take care of herself? And I said, wait, let's stop right there. Why should she take care of everybody else first? Let's turn that completely around. It's like, how about this woman who has these other responsibilities that she wants to honor and needs to, whether it's her family or her children or her people that work underneath her or over her as an employee or as an employer. How about she chooses to be powerful enough to address her own neediness and begin and fulfill her own needs, and then come, same as like what I already said about coming to whatever her responsibilities are as a nourished person instead of starving and exhausted and giving the last dregs. It's like, let's get out of the dregs. So, you know, another way of using a phrase I really love out of the Buddhist world is like, stop being such a hungry ghost. Go on quest, go on journey for what is it that feeds you, and feed yourself. Instead of waiting like, oh, I give so much, I'm now waiting for the big god or bird in the sky to come and feed me. It's like, nourish yourself.
I love it.
Like in the Native American way, the medicine person will hold burning cedar or sage or sweetgrass or something in front of a person, and we say, you know, take this smoke and bless yourself. And that in itself is a very good step. But I have taken it another step as a medicine person that's also a yogini, which is use your breath to bless yourself. You don't need the herbs, you don't need the smoke, and you don't even need the medicine person. Use your own breath and feed your life force. Start there. And then continue with that no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, then why? I mean, it must be interesting. It's such an interesting contradiction because so many of your students, mean, Forrest Yoga is so popular right now, and I see this in yoga culture generally. People idolize and worship the external, the famous yoga celebrity. You know, how do you teach your own students to find their own breath instead of looking to you as their idol?
Teachers are the shortening of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are useful.
Yeah.
So I am not saying to people it's like, oh, stop going to teachers and just figure it out for yourself, because I think that's a ridiculous thing to say. We learn from each other all the time. So
Sure.
part of what I teach and part of what my Forrest Yogas carry on is we bring in this ceremonial aspect of going on journey, going on quest on the mat. So like, for example, every class we set the intent, and it may be, the intent may be, you know, pick a spot inside of you that's injured. And it may be a specific thing like your back injury, or you have a brain injury, or you are bulimic, so your gut is trashed, or it could be your heart's been broken. You pick it. You choose it. And then the coaching through the different breathing and the poses is how to get in there and begin to clean it wherever it is. Or it may be very specific, like the intent could be your heart. And then working with learning how to come into good communication with your heart to find out what your heart needs and what steps can you take each day that will begin to fulfill your heart.
Yeah, I asked my staff, you know, what they would want to ask you, and a lot of people seem to be really excited about the fact that you and Forrest Yoga actually address pain. And so the fundamental question, which you've kind of addressed several times, is how does Forrest Yoga, or how do you help people move pain, you know, or process it?
All right. Well, let me go back into what I started.
Yeah.
So let's say that I wanted to work with your neck pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to you, and what I'm looking at is I'm not sure if I'm seeing this correctly on the camera, but it looks to me on your left side. Would you raise your left hand so I can tell which side?
Left hand.
Yes, your left hand. Yeah, looks to me on the left side. Yes, thank you. That is the side I'm at. Is like there's more contraction there, and it's a little bit darker there. And I'm not talking about dark so far as where the light in the room is.
Right.
So it's like, let's say, all right, for you, your left side of your jaw, your inner ear, and your upper trapezius, and into your collarbone is kind of contracted and it's knotted here. So let's make that your spot.
Okay.
So every time that you're breathing, unless in the class I'm asking you to breathe somewhere else, you're focusing your breath right there. And you're deliberately giving that area permission to start to unravel and to unwind. And we'll be doing poses in a way like if you let your right ear come down toward your right shoulder.
Mm-hmm. You may not go very far, yeah.
Yeah, and then let your jaw go. Yeah. Now since you know yoga breathing, use your deep ujjayi breath and start washing it from nostril through left inner ear, left side of neck, and begin rinsing out. Deeper breath. There you go. And let your shoulder blade come down on exhale. Your left shoulder blade. No, don't pull it. It's more of a letting it slide down. Okay.
I've got an arm there, yeah.
All right. Now, just stay settled for a minute. Let your eyes quit rolling around. Take a full breath through this left side of your neck and just feel what happens. Just one breath. People can watch you for a breath. Okay, now use your right hand on the side of your head and just cradle your head with your right hand. Now inhale, very slow, bring your head back up so your neck does not have to use itself to come up. And let go. Let go with your hand. Okay, do you feel how it's lightened up already just with that 1-2 breaths there?
Yes.
What do you feel?
Well, when I actually kind of focused and relaxed, like you said, stop moving my eyes around or whatever, and I did a full breath, just being present with my neck there, it actually almost felt more, not painful, but I felt the feeling more. Like I wasn't avoiding it.
Yes.
I actually felt it more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yes, your seeming pain level will increase at first because you are stripping the numbness off. So
Uh-huh.
don't run from that. Kind of
Right.
snuggle up against the area in pain. Keep breathing in it so you can be able to track through feeling, not through thinking, as the pain begins to change and disperse. Because now this area is more lit and your left shoulder has gone down some, so it's not so uneven as it was when we started to talk.
Yeah, and then
Just
when you
little
had me go
breaths.
back and I just put it back, then it actually felt the opposite. It felt more relieved. Yeah.
Yes, and that was just a few breaths. Can you imagine an hour and a half of working with that deep concentration and that beautiful focus and caring that much about yourself that you're willing to do something about your own pain? It's really fantastic
Yeah.
because in an hour or an hour and a half or 3 hours, depending on how long the class is, you
Right.
make a profound difference in one session. And so to bring that quality of capability and being able to affect your condition
Yeah.
to each practice is just fabulous because we're taught that we're ineffective, but the fact is in Forrest Yoga, we teach you how to be effective quickly. Like
Mhm.
that was a couple breaths and you made a change. And that's just delicious. And
Yeah,
it's
what's
not,
surprising to me is that you're so sort of like when you saw my reaction there, you were like you were so happy and like almost childlike. And I think of when I go to Forest Yoga, I was telling you with Kate Mulhoran, who's a wonderful teacher here in Boulder, and she's super sweet. But I always think of Forest Yoga as this sort of like, kind of like a Iyengar, almost like this macho kind of holding poses until it's painful, and then keep holding, and then you get through to the other side. But that didn't seem to be what you're talking about just now.
no, I think is that been what your experience has been?
I think the reputation, because like, you do these unbelievable demonstrations and you ride a Harley Davidson or whatever, and you have flame yoga pants and, like flames on the bottom, and you're just like this incredibly, obviously sweet and cheerful, but I didn't realize that, but like really tough person, and you have this really powerful backstory, life. Um, that, yeah, I think my preconception, and I think many people, so hopefully we're getting through that, was that Forest Yoga is super popular because it's kind of macho and kick-ass, and it's none of this like fruity. And I don't like the fruity yoga stuff either, so that's why I was attracted to it. But it's also not macho. It seems like it's actually quite delightful, and you're loving yourself, like you were saying.
It is extremely challenging, but the challenges are not necessarily us doing these difficult asanas, though I do go from super beginner into however advanced you want to go, let's go there. But it's also about challenging these deeper things inside of you, like where you are abusive or oblivious to yourself. Let's go after that because it's so sexy, it's so exciting. And like when I see you start to move energy, it's
Mm.
absolutely thrilling to me. I get really excited about it. Like, look, you just made a change, and I'm like very turned on by that.
Yeah,
And it's like there's a lot of excitement in this practice. There's a lot of passion in it,
yeah,
and there's a tremendous amount of healing. But there's also this spiritual questing that we crave, and it's in here. I've put it in there. And so all of that is, like I said, it's very sexy and very exciting and very fulfilling and empowering. And you get to do really fun poses. And because we know how to break the poses down, let's say you want to learn a handstand or you're scared of a handstand, we start building up your strength and your energetic connections so that you eventually can do a handstand
right, right.
and have that wonderful, fulfilling, exhilarating feeling, but also build your self-respect that way. It's like, yeah, I can do a handstand. And
Yeah,
by the way, my bikes aren't Harley. I have a K1200R BMW and a K1200S
yeah.
BMW. So
I
they're
realized, yeah,
bikes.
I realized it was dangerous territory by guessing what kind of bike you rode, because people who ride bikes, and do it right, take their bikes pretty passionately.
Oh yeah, but I would ride. I've ridden Harley, so they're a whole different cruise ride. They're good for ambling.
Uh-huh. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I have like 5 different bicycles, different kind of bike. So
Mm.
that's my thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I just want to mention it's completely irrelevant, but it just made me think of you were saying when we get through our fear, like with a handstand, and then we build self-respect and delight. I actually am scared of doing handstands, so I always like have like 3 people assisting me because I'm this 190-pound guy. You know, it's hard. I use a wall and like 3 people to prevent me from hurting the entire classroom. But
Mm.
but I just traveled for the first time. I'm turning 40 in like tomorrow, and I never had traveled in my life, and I was intimidated by being lonely or lost or confused or whatever traveling around the world because
Yeah.
normally I know everybody and I'm super comfortable, you know. And
Yeah.
I went, and it was actually really delightful and fun, and I was quite capable, remarkably, and I built a lot of self-respect in doing it. So it just reminds me of what you're talking about is life, and it's much more fun to face those fears and jump in than to avoid them for 40 years, you know?
Yeah. And maybe it took you 40 years to get enough self-esteem that you can do it. It's like
Yeah.
there's that too.
Yeah, and money
But
also was a
also, there's
factor.
really
But
specific tools that you can. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying it's. I also didn't have the money to travel, which was enough. I mean, I definitely would have faced my fears of going to Mexico and sitting on the beach earlier in life if I'd had the dough. But now I'm out of excuses. Anyway,
And you jumped on. Congratulations.
yeah. Well, thank you, Anna. So, what were you saying?
That there's tools that you can use when you're in a fearful situation, whether it's a fun, fearful situation like I'm challenging myself to do this travel thing and it's scary, or handstand, or I'm really scared that I need to speak this to my partner and I'm afraid he or she's going to run away if I say this. There's tools that I want people to get. So one is this deep breathing. The other is active feet. So it's like where you spread your toes out and press the balls of your feet and your heels down into the floor. Just like what you were saying in the beginning of people getting grounded through their butt. It's like get grounded, literally connect down to the earth,
Yeah,
because when we're scared, we disconnect at our pelvis and our legs, and that's some of the strongest parts of our body. So connect to your strength
I
and
love that.
then speak or do whatever the fearful thing is, but stay in feeling touch with your feet and with your breath, and you will have a much more authentic and core connected experience instead of just going into your like the scary stuff in your head.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's totally true. That's why many of us get so clumsy and kind of not present with our bodies. We're not synchronized in body, speech, and mind when we're nervous or afraid.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you can change your breathing, now I'm going to go a little farther in this because there's some really specific things that happen in fear. One
Please.
is we all clutch. Yeah, we get clenched. But the neck, the jaw, the eyes, and the brain get very tight. And what that does is it's sort of like putting what's called blinders on a horse, like when you've seen a horse with a carriage, they have
Hmm.
these things over their eyes so they
Hmm.
can't see other than this tiny little picture in front of them that doesn't make much sense. And that's what we do when we go into fear is we get all locked up here, and so we cut out our options. We no longer can see the whole picture. And speaking as a horse trainer, some idiot human was sure that doing this to a horse was going to make it more obedient when horses are very visual.
Right.
And I decided to question that, and I started training my horses to pull carts without the blinders on them. And once they had a good look on what is that noisy thing, then they were good. And they would be able to see their whole world without this stupidness. Humans do some stupid things.
Yeah.
So it's like when we get scared, we lock up here, we lock in our eyes, we lock in our jaw, and it's like putting these blinders on, and
Hmm.
then we lose at least 3/4 of our resources. And so just when we need all of our resources for dealing with this challenging situations, we shut it down. So if we start doing this deep breathing and active feet and deliberately feel for as best as we can to unlock all this, like move our eyes around, move our jaw, take a moment to breathe like what you just did with your neck, But if you do it fast, you add more tension. You got to go slow.
That's
You know,
interesting.
and when you keep your eyes still, then the neck and the brain can relax. But if your eyes are darting back and forth, you're actually increasing your agitation. So if you take these couple of breaths in a couple of moments, and then it's like, poof, okay, I just changed my nervous system. I just changed my chemistry. Now I'm more ready to deal with this and take it on more as a dharma joust instead of like, oh my God, now what? You know,
Right.
and like for me, I want to be in a position of resourcefulness when I deal with my challenges, so I can be proud of the steps I take instead of ashamed.
Right. Yeah, that's so helpful. Even just that one little thing you said about not, whipping your neck around or doing things quickly, but allowing the breath to journey through that tension. Because like I climb a lot, and I also work on my laptop all the time, so you're very perceptive, or maybe it's just super obvious, probably. But my neck's really tight, and so whenever I'm about to climb, I like do this, and it never feels good. Actually, it never
Yeah,
helps.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
not like that. But
Yeah.
what you just did with me when I was talking you through it, how
Yeah.
you changed it and you felt the increase in sensation and then the easing of it. I mean, you felt that. And then
100.
when you brought your head back up, how there was like kind of a, and what's so cool about that is that you change the chemistry that you're running through your blood when you do that. It's really cool. You start releasing the neck and you start affecting the amygdala, which holds your pain patterns in your brain. Amygdala is in the back of the brain. And that affects how you deal with your challenging situations, especially your fearful ones. And to me, that's like, oh my God, that's such a huge step in power. And personally, I like power. I don't think powerless is a cool way to be.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be in power, and I want to use being in power in integrity. Like when we're in a fearful situation, that's where we are most inclined to be powerless. And so that's a great place to do a bit of a dharma dance and change the situation. Like, I'm going to change this fear into an excitement and look for where's the opportunity to quantum leap here and to evolve instead of doing the same old stupid shit that I always do.
Right. Yeah. That sounds exactly like what Pema Chodron says, except you say it in a kind of very different style, I think, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know Pema, the Buddhist
I
teacher?
know of her,
Yeah.
and I've had other people quote me wonderful things, but I have not read her books, but I've heard some great quotes.
She has this great quote that's exactly what you said, but she says it in a very different way. She says, and she's very kick-ass. People think of her as a sweet nun, but she's an incredibly tough lady. And she says, don't be so predictable. Like when you get into your habitual patterns and fear comes up, people just kind of, we just generally try and get away from that fear, get away from the pain, and instead try something different. That's where I'm pretty ignorant about what she's actually suggesting, but probably being present, breathing, having a sense of humor, jumping into it. I don't know. Something like that.
I think when we get our stuff dictating our actions, then we are in our predictable habits. And so I also don't know what context she was speaking in, but just that one treasure sentence about being so predictable.
Yeah.
Because then we go into those same neurological pathways that have been carved into us since children. And personally, I actually have more resources now at 57 than I did at 6 years old. And I don't really want my 6-year-old decisions running my life as an adult. I want to make better decisions, especially in those moments of high challenge or stress. And so that it's like recognizing like, oh, I'm doing the same thing that I learned to do as a coping mechanism at 6. And at 6-year-old, any coping mechanism is a good skill. But as an adult and as a medicine woman and as a teacher and a leader, I want to make decisions that serve me in a more good medicine way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So being able to recognize, like knowing myself, doing enough self-study and recapitulation, which is like combing through my reactions or combing through my experiences, to recognize when I'm doing that taint from those old patterns and those old experiences and going like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to be behaving like an abused child.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring my best self forward instead of my most scared and hurt self.
Yeah.
And let me snuggle in with that scared, hurt self so she can learn something different right now.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you know, like taking my 6-year-old inside and saying, come here, baby. This is not a situation that you have to run. I'm going to just hold on to you, and you get to learn something new. And me as the adult, I'm going to run this situation now, so relax.
That's beautiful.
But it took a long time to learn to do that, or even to recognize when my 6-year-old was trying to run the show because she thought she had to.
Right. Yeah. Well, Ana, we're well over time, but we joked about how we could talk for hours today. I feel like it would be helpful for me, at least, hopefully for the viewers too. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm I'd love to hear or read something about what your experience is like when you connect with the Oracle. I think that would be pretty interesting.
Well, it's more like when I become the Oracle.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Watch out, Forrest Yogis. So thank you so much for your time, Ana. It's an honor to finally connect Elephant Journal readers with yourself and Forrest Yoga.
Thank you, and I had a blast talking to you. Let's do it again sometime.
Anytime. I'd love to hear about the Oracle, or talk to the Oracle. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ana. And as always, you can find us on SoundCloud. You can find us on youtube.com/Waylon H. Lewis. And you can connect with Forrest Yoga. I assume it's forrestyoga.com, I hope, with 2 R's, as you can see on the screen. Oh, yeah, it's right below. forrestyoga.com. Ana, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a